Okay, we're gonna get started now. So I'm happy to introduce Dwayne Samuels. He's been a mover and shaker in the tech and machine learning world for a while now. He's the CEO and founder of SameLogic. It's a platform that captures the data from user interactions. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Dwayne. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the intro, Akita. And thanks for saying I'm a mover and shaker. I feel like I don't feel like a mover and shaker based on like everything that's happening in the industry now. But as we can all see, AI is changing pretty much everything that we do, especially in the technology industry. And pretty much, I think in the near future, we'll be actually seeing hardware, robots, and everything like that. That will probably be in our own homes as well. One can hope. But pretty much today our talk will be around how AI is changing the UX industry, right? And for short, UX, I'm not sure if people here are familiar with terminology in the tech industry, but UX stands for user experience. So whenever you're using a platform, if you enjoy using the platform, you have a great user experience. If you don't, you have a bad user experience. All right, so let me share my screen here and start the presentation. Interrupt me. I kind of love when presentations are kind of free flowing and more like conversations more than like one to many. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. All right. So cool. So LLMs are changing the way how we engage with products. So LLMs in short, I'm pretty sure you all know, but for those who don't, LLMs stand for large language models, right? So when you hear about ChatGPT or Claude, or Mistral, those things are large language models. So imagine someone that pretty much read all the books in the world, right? And they can like make all these really cool connections between all the books that have some correlation and like have a conversation with you. Pretty much that's in just that's what an LLM is, right? So Gartner says that pretty much 80% of customer interactions will be managed by AI by 2025. Forbes is saying that I can see that as well in like my personal day-to-day interactions with people in the UX industry. UX professionals are using AI tools. Who are using AI tools are 35% more productive, and I would say probably even more. But based on everything that's happening, like it's really interesting to see what's happening in the industry. And also McKinsey says that AI driven personalization can increase conversion rates by up to 30%, right? And I'll be talking a bit more about personalization and how really cool things can happen with generative UI. So we'll go over like a short history of how we actually got here, right? Well, it's a very, very condensed history of like how we actually got to this place in UX. So first, I remember I can remember, and I think everyone remembers when IBM won the Watson tool from IBM won Jeopardy, and it showcased like how natural language processing works. And in 2012, Google Brain created a project that could recognize cats from YouTube videos. And then one thing that a lot of people tend to jump over as well is like how this little startup that got acquired by Yahoo for $30 million got started in 2011 changed the way how people were thinking about artificial intelligence called Sumly, which pretty much grabbed like all the news at that time and then kind of summarized everything within one or two paragraphs. And that I think planted a seed in many people's minds, which kind of led to the founding of many other AI companies after that. And we can see that happening with OpenAI getting started in 2015 with Elon and Sam. And Amazon releasing Alexa, and in 2016 to 2020, a lot of things happened. Google, like the DeepMind project beats the Go World Champion, and GPT 1, 2, and 3 are released. And then because of these iterative releases from OpenAI, prompted a lot of different things in the industry as well. We have AI assisted design tools and generative UI platforms. And in 2025, AI is set to become integral to the entire UX lifecycle. So from product ideation to product being shipped. So it's very interesting what's happening. So based on everything that's happening, we can safely say that AI is not replacing UX professionals. AI is supercharging us, So it's a tool that we use. I don't think based on everything that has to be done, it will actually replace UX professionals. So let's talk about the new frontier a bit. So the thing that AI is really good at when it comes on to really understanding users is this thing called continuous real-time insight generation, right? So the old approach is pretty much using periodic surveys and focus groups and usability tests, which I do believe there still are times and places for all these tools. But with the AI-driven approach, you have constant monitoring of your product, and you have like a good understanding in real time of how people are using the products, and you can make better decisions from that. Also, when it comes on to pattern recognition for deep insights, the traditional approach is pretty much just manual analysis of like user data and behavior. You jump into your Google Analytics, your heap, your mix panel. You have to look at all the data, and sometimes hire a data scientist to look through all the data, and sometimes it can take weeks for you to make a decision. With the AI-driven approach, all those complex patterns and correlations can really be surfaced to the top, so decisions can be made quicker. And also with the guiding eye of a data scientist, you can know which data is right, and what things to actually follow. You can like pull out biases and pull out like the hallucinations that these models provide. So the AI driven approach is changing that as well. And one other area which I'm really like excited to see evolve in a few years is called generative UI. So the traditional approach with product building is one, you take user feedback, then you take weeks or months to build, and then you ship, and then you iterate, you continue that cycle. With the AI driven approach, you have constant automated product iteration based on user habits and user feedback, right? So this is something that has never happened before. So if you have an issue with a new product you launch, rather than actually like writing code, the AI itself writes code for you and ships the product. And then, I'll show you exactly how generative UI works. It's pretty fantastic. So one of the leading tools where this is concerned is called V0 from Vercel. And I'm going to show you three examples of how this works. So let me do this here. It's called v0.dev. And the first prompt I'm going to run is called, I'm going to create a simple component that shows a notification badge, right? So to create it, you say one, generate a notification badge component. It should be a small circle with a number inside, positioned at the top right corner of the icon. Use a vibrant color for the badge to make it stand out. Going to press enter, and it's going to generate the code. And we're going to see three variations pop up right here. So one, we can see that variation. We can see the model, right? We can see the first example here. Pretty simple. It's going to leave it at the top. It created an icon right there. And there's another one right here, right? And then we can also look at the code as well. So that was a small example. Let me create a new generation, something that is a bit more complex, which shows an expandable, frequently asked question, right?
And let me ask you,
So
so for the first example, what would people do previously?
So pretty much if users requested a notification badge, or if they wanted that in the settings, the team would have to actually go in and build like the UI and everything for that, and then write the functionality behind that. And obviously, like this is only the UI layer itself, but based on that feedback, it can be quickly done through the use of basic text-based prompts, right? So yeah, it's pretty interesting to see exactly how the industry is progressing. So the second example itself is about a frequently asked question, right? So we can see the prompt there, and we're generating the FAQ section, right? So one, here it has the pricing structure. How do I get started? And then everything like that. It's all clickable as well, expandable. We have a different variation here and a different variation here as well, right? So we can see the functionality is baked in, and we can also look at the code that it generated for this UI itself. And it has the CSS, the layout, and the Tailwind configuration as well. And let's run a final, more complex prompt, right? Let me do a new generation here and run that. So it's designing a product analytics page, a dashboard that includes the header, the product logo, and the user profile information. And all this was generated in real time just from one prompt. So imagine getting consistent feedback from your users saying that, look, we want this feature, all right? The functionality behind it, yes, with some tinkering could be done, but the interface itself can be designed, on the fly, so integrated into like into like a product pipeline. This is so powerful. So that's V0 in a nutshell, right? So let's jump back to the presentation. And Kita, how much time do I have left?
You have until you have about 15 minutes.
15. Okay, gotcha. So we do have some time for Q&A as well.
Let's
So
let's
let's
into
talk.
it in 15 minutes.
Gotcha. So pretty much let's talk about some emerging players. So for next gen user research, we have Maze that does AI powered continuous product discovery. So that constant probing and understanding what users want is done through Maze. Dovetail is really good for like getting all your the repositories of customer feedback data and customer data for deep analysis. Dovetail is really good as well. Um, and you have Reduct Video, which is really great for analyzing video. So if you have tons of customer feedback video, you can use that to analyze all that very easily. And also we have Listener, which people use to get panels together, but their approach to user synthesis, to research synthesis is very interesting. And if you have any products that you're building that one need a lot of feedback before actually like going to the market, Listen would be a good platform to actually get this feedback from, and they utilize different approaches that help you to get the feedback you want to make the right decisions. And last but not least, shameless plug, same logic. We are user intent as a service, and we're AI powered user research platform as well. Um, Another category, which is behavior prediction. I do see like a lot of companies like coming out of this area. My two favorite companies are one, Viable, which has a really good understanding of gives you a good understanding of your users' qualitative data, which is I think the hardest thing to analyze. And you have neurons.com or neuronsinc.com, which is really good at predicting consumer behavior, especially in the SaaS space or in the e-commerce space. So you can cluster your users and know exactly what user segments are going to do. And for generative UI, my favorite is Vercel. You do have a lot of platforms utilizing generative UI technologies like Brain.ai from Natural AI. They are a platform that pulls in all your email data, your data from Amazon. Pretty much, it's like a hub for all the apps that you use to conduct your daily life, and it gives you like a summary, and it generates all this information from the using the APIs of the products that you're using. So yeah, so pretty much that's my presentation on what's happening in the UX industry. My name is Dwayne Samuels. If you'd love to connect, you can visit me at dwaynesamuels.com and or on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is on the website as well. But yeah, that was a quick deep dive. I think it was a little bit too quick, but it's really interesting what's happening in the industry.
No, that
Hey,
was
Dwayne, can you hear me?
Yes, I
yeah.
can.
Just a quick question for you. Where does this? Because I see that you're leveraging a lot of tools to do little pieces, whether it's discovery, whether it's grabbing sort of the insights from the users and things of that nature. Is there a tool out there that kind of has all these different functionalities? Because I look at it as various functionalities, but as SaaS, right? Is there some sort of tool that encompasses all of them right now in the marketplace? Because one of the challenges you have, if I was basically getting my people coming to me and saying, hey, I want this tool, that tool, I'm going to say, well, I mean, I'm not going to spend licenses on 10 different, tools for you, right? That's going to create some sort of technical debt. So I would challenge them to go find something that I can do. At least maybe I can spend on maybe two that would get me to most of what I need versus like six or seven of them. Do you have that?
Yes.
And that's my
Uh,
first question. I have another question after that. Yeah.
Sure. So for the exact need that you have, I think there should be a tool or service that has all the services that you require. Um, it all depends on like how deep you want to go as well. If you want something that's very broad, I think you probably would have to build something yourself because yeah, as you can see right now, it's very fragmented, for different things. Because like companies are deeply focused on one particular area in one particular industry. So if you have a company that spans multiple industries, you probably would have to build something that facilitates that need, So yeah, it's we're in the early stages, so I'm pretty sure like something will pop up in the future, but if something that you need now, I would recommend like building that yourself.
Okay, perfect. And this all this falls to me under partly governance, right? Because you talked about being able to look at what your AI sort of tools and draw insights from it. You talked about discovery and all that, right? Can you kind of describe to me, if I was going into sort of someone was going to say, hey, how would you set up governance for a particular organization, right? Can you just talk to me about how you would do that based on these tools and the different ones that are applicable? I know discovery is one. You mentioned some others. How do they kind of tie into the umbrella of governance? You know what I mean? How can you morph that into governance? Because I think
Got
what
you.
you were talking about is product development. But if you were to translate that to, okay, I'm providing governance from an AI governance for your organization. Here are the tools that I'm using. Here is why. Can you kind of help me out with that?
Yeah, sure. You'd have to approach it from two angles, right? One, you'd have to understand how the model was built and what data points or what data sources the model has access to, right? Once you understand the foundation of that, you if you can't use certain data, if you can't use copyrighted data, or you don't want to train on certain types of data, or utilize certain types of data that the model has been trained on, you'd have to like really get a good understanding of that. So if you're using an API, go deeply into like their terms of service, and like understand like their papers and see what things they've trained upon. And also the other section would be, if you have users, make sure that your security infrastructure is like proper, and you don't have any if you want users to one have your unique experience and personalization, probably have that set aside from everyone else's. So it'd require like a lot of like deep diving, and like I'm not like the right person to recommend. I'm not like a legal person, but you have to make sure that security is great, and understand where the model is coming from, to make sure that you're not running into any issues.
Got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure, no problem.
I wanted to. I'm sorry, Stan. Please go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yep, all good. Thank you, Tola. So real quick, Dwayne, first off, thanks for sort of a great, quick deep dive, as you call it. Very, very interesting insights there. My one quick question to you would be, and this is building off of Emeka's comments there, is do you foresee the big players like the Adobes looking to kind of build this capability in sort of a holistic fashion, or do you feel like they perceive this in these suite of sort of niche players as a threat?
They're building tons of tools in this space already. My favorite tool from them is voice related. So as I was saying earlier, we run a podcast, and a lot of times the audio quality is not great. So we upload it to their service, and it makes it sound like studio quality. So they're working on audio technologies, they're working on video technologies, imaging as well. They're using a lot of like stable diffusion models. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're doing things in the generative UI space as well, because they're head to head competitors with Figma, which pretty much just launched a new suite of tools a few weeks ago, and like the industry has like sucked it up like a sponge, you know. So I'm pretty sure like they're working on a few things, and based on the moves they've made over the past couple of months, like people are not pleased, especially with their terms of service and like pricing. So I'm pretty sure they'll want to win back some trust and win back some users. So I'm pretty sure they'll head down that path.
Thank you.
Sure.
I wanted to ask a quick question. So I know you were on generative AI, and I appreciate the user experience, but my question is a little bit out of the scope, and I just wanted to see where we were at as far as technology. So I'm currently working on, I need to improve the user experience when we're working inside immersive environments. So like how we're doing like Unreal Engine right now, I have to have developers custom built the experience, the user experience, because it's just not there. And it requires a lot more development time than previous before when it comes to just Figma and just regular app development. What tools are coming or are going to come in that space that can maybe be a relevance to what I'm looking for?
I'm not really like familiar with the AR VR space. Am I correct? You said AR VR, correct?
Yeah, mixed
Gotcha.
reality. They're all getting convoluted very quickly.
Gotcha. So I think the thing that really got me excited about technology, in 2007, 2008, fresh out of high school, was seeing like mixed reality software as well. And that time, I had like a simple BlackBerry phone, and like the way how you'd render things in real life, it was using QR codes. So you had to like build that and write that yourself. And since then, like there was like I didn't really see any infrastructure. That was like a long time ago, obviously. There haven't really been an infrastructure to one test and build. You'd have to build out yourself. But I think with what Apple is doing with their heads-up display, and what Facebook is doing, they do have those things built into their toolkit. So I'm not sure if you're building something from scratch, or are you building on already existing platform?
So the experience we're not building from scratch. We use Apple, we use MetaQuest, but the problem is we need to custom build that experience inside of the environment so it meets our user experience how we need to for our consumers. Um,
Uh,
and that's where the mastery and the trickery begin at the same time, because it's a game, and it's a sometimes an expensive game that you have to play inside of that
oh,
environment.
but it all depends on like what kind of environment you're trying to build as well. So like one, you'd have to like talk with like prospective users or users, and see exactly like how you're approaching like the mock-up scenario, the section. Are you like creating mock-ups of like how you'd want the experience to look, or how you want the experience to feel? How are you approaching that?
We are doing so. I am basing it on my experience, how we're able to see and visualize. So we want to make sure that it doesn't have vertical effects. So you do worry about the display, but we want it to be in conjunction with like almost like how a pilot drives in real time. You want to be able to allow them to still see the same operationals, the same controls that they would in real life, but just through this experience, and be able to control and facilitate that through the experience.
Gotcha. Look up this guy. His name is Meron Gribbets, Meron Gribbets. He had this company called Meta before, which Facebook acquired the rights to. He was like a pilot. He designed heads-up displays for pilots in Israel, and then like moved to the Valley to create like a VR company, and then it got acquired.
Can
So
you spell it one more time, please? I'm so sorry.
Meron Meron Gribbets, Gribetz. And then look it up. But Keto was saying that you have a second talk coming up. So thank you again for this opportunity. It was great talking to everyone. And I'd love to do this again as well.
Thank you.
No
Thank you
problem.
so much, Dwayne. We're so grateful. And
No problem.
we'd love to have you back again.
No problem. Cheers. Bye.
Yep. Cheers. Bye-bye. Okay, for our next talk, we have Ethan Anthony. So Ethan, I'm gonna hand it over to you now.
All right, cool, Keita. Thank you. A lot of you guys know me. If you don't, I'm Ethan Anthony, I'm founder and CEO of Route 42. And at Route 42, we're focused, we use artificial intelligence and vibration analysis to eliminate machine downtime. Our ultimate ambition is to make unplanned downtime in the manufacturing space non-existent. So we're in smart manufacturing, artificial intelligence, and we use Gen AI as a part of our product offering. But today, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to talk to you guys about something that's a little different. The same, but different. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
We can.
Perfect. So today, what I'm going to talk about is something that I think we need to talk about. My presentation will be brief, and I also like the conversation style, but I think the meta thesis here is we spend a lot of time just subconsciously and consciously in many instances chasing buzzwords. We hear AI just like we heard cloud computing, just like we heard big data. We hear all these things. And they become big buzzword in the C-suites, the boardrooms, everywhere. And so we chase those buzzwords. But as was the case with big data, as was the case, and is the case with cloud computing, SaaS, and all these different models and technologies, the people who are really gaining max benefit from these things are the ones who understand at the most fundamental level, it's about value. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I term this presentation Productizing AI. Again, very short, and it's more designed for us to open the floor, share our respective experiences, and I can sort of chime in from a tech perspective, product perspective, business perspective, and sort of kind of all those things converging. So let's get started here. All right, again, the objective is to understand how to effectively productize AI. And what I mean by that is by productizing AI, I mean gaining maximum value for AI relative to your use case. It's really at the most basic level, the boring stuff. It's not the fancy end product. It's not the big 20x, 30x, 100x, 1000x numbers we like to talk about. It's about, hey, this stuff works and it solved our problem, no matter how unsexy the problem is. In fact, the argument can be made that AI is making the biggest impact in the least visible spots, like internal and productivity. I always encourage fellow CEOs or executives, if you're going to implement AI, the best starting point is internally with your own processes, because you know those processes. So, and the key takeaway, I hope, is that AI should be viewed as a tool to solve problems, not this sort of mythical elixir. I do AI and then I'm great and everything works and etc. So, second here, let me move. What's the name? Things in the way. Okay. So again, are we chasing buzzwords? When I look at this, I look at perception, reality, and the problem, the challenge. Okay. The media is hitting us with AI everything. AI is doing this.
Ethan, just to interrupt for a second. Are you still on slide 1?
No.
Okay.
You guys only see slide 1?
Okay, now it's moved up now. Yeah, we were only looking at slide 1 as you were talking. So
okay, let's try a quick test here. Let me know if it changed now.
Yeah, we can see slide 2 now.
So what is the title of that?
Introduction.
Okay, so it's not changing when I go full screen. Whatever. This is weird.
Do you have
But
two monitors? Because that could be it. It might be showing the wrong monitor.
no, but what I'm going to do is not doing that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to go back and share. But this time I'm going to share my desktop.
Sure.
Okay. And so now you guys see introduction, right?
Yes.
We do.
Do you see the second page?
We
Yes.
do.
You see state of AI?
Yes.
Okay, good. So now it's changing. All right. So now when I think about state of AI, again, relative to this productization, I'm thinking perception, reality, problem. Okay, perception is what's being built, the media, the chat GPTs, and a lot of the hype that's being built up. Some of it's real, some of it is manufactured and not for the good. In reality, is a lot of the AI that we see is powered by hype. It's not value creation. It's we can do this and we can do that. But when you get beneath the surface of it, you realize that, particularly being in the AI space, I understand that most of what people are saying is the big thing is not the big thing. AI is only as good as the data. The data is only as good as its use. So, and then finally, the problem. When you have all this buildup, okay, and we see it a lot in our meetings, and we've all gone down this rabbit hole. Basically, we develop unrealistic expectations. All right. We say, oh, look, this new AI is out. I want to use this to solve that problem. And while you could possibly use AI in the use case that you're specifying, you're neglecting to recognize and realize the challenge associated with AI. Just because you get it to work once doesn't mean that you can get it to work all the time. There's the data source, there's optimization, okay, there's resource requirements, scalability. There's so many challenges at a nuance level with artificial intelligence. And then if you want to go the API route, that's great, but you're at the mercy of someone else's tool. So how much of it can you use to power, big business use cases? So at the end of the day, and organizations, they come in from the organizational perspective and they say, I want to use artificial intelligence to do this. Whenever someone frames it that way and they didn't properly introduce the problem, run. Because that's the person who's trying to taking a hammer and they're looking for a nail. Their hammer, as we say in San Francisco, hammer looking for a nail. Okay. You don't want to do that. Again, AI is just a tool, a very general tool with a lot of use cases. And if your problem can't be solved specifically with that tool, then there's no reason to leverage it. And assuming your problem can't be solved with that tool, can your problem be solved best with that tool? Because if there's another tool, and I tell people this all the time, if we could achieve our objectives as an organization without AI, then I'm going for it. And in fact, a part of our product offering, we use vibration analysis. Vibration sensors send data to the cloud. We process that data. We use statistical modeling to deliver what's called advanced condition monitoring. That's not AI, okay? But that's a massive value creator. If our AI was to go down, our customers still would be able to monitor the health of their machines. They can still get alerts based on anomalistic behavior. It's just not as refined. It's just not as predictive, okay, I would say, as using our advanced models to detect anomalies. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yep.
Okay, guys, feel free to stop me at any time to ask questions or what have you.
I just want to stop you, Ethan, and say amen.
Ethan,
This is the boring stuff. This is the stuff that nobody really wants to talk about. We kind of want to fast track to the win, and we got AI and we can do this and we can do that. But understanding the problem, the context that you're using it in, and understanding the weaknesses of any AI. The weakness of any AI is the data. It's the data. And if you don't have access to the data, I always say what shaped our business model and approach is our capacity to access and control the data. The data that we use, we have access to, we have control of it, and in many ways, we de facto own it. It's the customer's data, but we are the driving force behind that data. We deploy the sensors, we control the sensors, so there are no bottlenecks. The quality of the data, everything, we control that. And because of that, we can hyper focus on delivering the best experience and value from our AI. Now, imagine if we had to beg the customers for the data. We had to beg the customers for access. Access wasn't consistent. It wasn't always available. That would be a nightmare. I don't care how great the AI is. Building the AI models and even optimizing the AI models and testing them for drift, I swear to you, that's only 15 to 20% of the work. The real work is in making sure that you get that consistent quality data. But most people never look there. They never, the previous speaker, I'm sorry, what's his name? What's your name?
He left. His name was Dwayne Samuels.
Yeah, so Dwayne put it best when he said it's all about the data. He was 100% right. It's all about the data. And if you can't get that data source, I encourage everybody, if you're going to do anything in AI, stop thinking about AI and ask yourself, where's my data coming from? Can I guarantee the quality of that data? Can I get that data on a consistent basis? Is it always going to be accessible to me? Answer those fundamental questions. If there's a no to any of those, stop what you're doing and fix that problem. Because if you don't, you're going to have a real issue when you start deploying and rolling out AI models, talking about providing a consistent level of service, quality of service to customers, because it's going to be all over the place. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense. I want to take it a step further here and just kind of challenge some of what we're talking about here, because you have your data, you have your AI tools. I think another piece of this is that clients are constantly asking themselves, a lot of them say, "Hey, I want AI, I want AI," and they usually do it because their peers are looking for data or are talking about AI, so they kind of want to keep up with the Joneses, right? But at the end of the day, I think what's fundamentally important is that, or what I see happen is they end up having a lot of technical debt because they just have all these tools. And why I say technical debt is that no one really knows how, to derive value from these tools. Yeah, your AI tool can do really, really cool predictions and things of that nature. But if you're not tracking the value or you're not using it to actually say, hey, this is the ROI on this particular benefit, eventually that's just going to be dumped as technical debt and you'll be out of there in no time. So let's take it a step further, right? How do you now start to this value that we talk about? How do you start to prepare the client, right, beyond just the tool and how we should drive value, right? I have some thoughts, but I wanted to hear from your perspective of how you start doing that. How do you create those OKRs, and how do you say, okay, what are we tracking and all those things? Because ultimately speaking, if you don't get that right, even how good your tool is, you won't last,
Doesn't
right?
matter.
So you can't get in the door without data, but you're going to be run out of there quickly without the value. You see what I'm saying? So
Yep.
let's talk through that. Let's challenge the thought a little bit more. So how do you, because I think that's pretty difficult, because the value means a lot to different people. And how do you start to have that conversation is what I'm really interested about too.
Mm-hmm. I like that, and I'm going to cover that moving forward. So I take a product management, and product management, we always talk about systematic frameworks used in like the McKinsey consultants, et cetera, for problem solving, and understanding that you have to go through a consistent, so some steps to actually get to that point of value. And one of those steps is actually problem identification and determining what you're going to do and whittling it down to a simple use case and determining success metrics.
Right. And Ethan, I'm going to jump in here a bit with that also. So I'm the COO for Route 42, and you guys that have talked to me before know I'm the guy that's going to make it happen from a technology perspective, PMO perspective. And so what you guys are talking about is, I was hearing, and Ameka, you were going straight to it. So what the client wants at the end of the day is they want data, but they want actionable data. Data that's showing me, I'm making money with this stuff. And then also data that helps me make better decisions for his operations. That's what you're really looking for. And that's what you're trying to, you need to add with those other aspects that Ethan was talking about as far as the pillars of using this stuff. Because again, it goes back to your point. I'm not, if you're not giving me anything valuable, then I've just got a bunch of AI tools that I'm paying for every month, a bunch of licenses, and I'm not getting anything from it other than maybe advertisement to say that we're using it. And that's all we're doing with it. We're using it. We're not using it effectively.
And I think
Exactly.
I can add
Go
something
for it.
on that as well. So I can talk about it from the point of view of a P&L owner. So a few years ago, I owned a $30 million P&L, and I would have vendors come and try to present to us solutions of different types, including machine learning solutions. And the thing that moved me always was, how is this going to impact my financial goals for the quarter, for the year? A lot of times things sound nice and fluffy, but when I start asking questions about what's the impact to my operating expenses, what's the impact to my revenue, the crickets. So from just a business owner, those things are top of mind.
Exactly. And I think that, again, going back to the fundamental premise, this is where the focus has to be on, like, what's value? And yes, value means different things to different people, but those are the conversations that have to be had in the beginning. I need to know, like, if you're running a company, if you're out there delivering technology to a customer, if you're in a consultancy, for our customers, what brings value? Well, reduced downtime, knowing that an issue is there. We could literally have a success metric, how many issues we identified based on our tool. That's a success metric, because with identification of issue comes a reduced probability of machine downtime. That's value to a customer, and they'll pay for that. That's tangible, it's quantifiable. So at the end of the day, I think that if I were to synthesize this, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, you need value that is tangible and that is quantifiable. Okay? Tangible and quantifiable, that the customer or client can see and understand. Look, this is what this is doing. And if they don't think it's sufficient, it gives you a foundation to say, okay, we've under delivered. You know what I mean? And we know what to work on because we know clearly what they value. But there needs to be a mindset that we're going into this thing with value. Even if a customer says we want to spend money and get all this and get all that, don't allow them to walk in there saying they're just going to throw money at it without a clear understanding of what value is and how you're going to bring it to them. And the ability to give them those reports, okay, that shows value. To Drew's point, just making sure that they see the actual tangible value that's going to move the needle for them. So just quick statistics here, like McKinsey Consulting is forever stating how leaders overstate, the importance of AI. They always talk about, hype up the importance of AI, but yet only a smaller percentage of them, relatively speaking, are saying, wow, it's actually working. And that speaks to, again, here, we talked about this a few minutes ago, guys, impact versus ability. People get so dialed into the ability. Oh, AI can do this, AI can do that, AI can, and most of the stuff people say it can do, it can't do, to be honest with you. I always say the large language models are tantamount to, let's say, if you had a friend who's on the spectrum, who was maybe 10 years old, who had all the knowledge in the world, and you ask them a question. Everything you say to them is literal. Okay, it's not figurative, it's literal. And they're going to give you a literal answer. And that's the reason why that thing we call prompt engineering, advanced prompt engineering, and RAGs and all that stuff are, and fine-tuned LLMs, the instruction-led LLMs are becoming a thing now, because what they do is they create context that help it to better understand what the correct answer should be. But the point is, when you look at it from a very reductionist perspective, you assume that AI has all the answers. Once you use it, it solves everything. That's way too much sci-fi, way too little reality. So when you hype up the ability of AI, okay, and you downplay the impact, you assume the impact is inevitable when you hype up the ability, then what's going to happen is you're going to go down a rabbit hole, and you're going to end up with all this technical debt, all this junk, and nothing to show for it. So my approach and what I encourage people to do, and what I do to myself on a regular basis, is to always circle back to the impact of whatever it is we're doing. Because at the end of the day, as we all concede, if you're not generating impact, you ain't doing a damn thing. To be honest with you, you're just playing with fancy tools, and inevitably it's going to catch up with you. So the conversation's got to be about impact as opposed to the ability. Let's just say the ability is big, but the tool itself is only as good as you can use it to create impact relative to your use case. And Professor Andrew Ng, which anybody who's familiar with machine learning has either communicated, seen, or I took a class from this guy. He's like amazing. He did a study and he said there's a 10x impact layer projects are 10x more successful, which makes total sense. Again, when you have that conversation about impact, like what is the problem, and you hyper focus on the problem, okay, and you get a thorough understanding of, well, what tools are currently being used to solve the problem, and is AI the tool to use to solve the problem? As I mentioned, Route 42 as an example, AI is the tool, the best tool to use for our use case with those manufacturers, hands down. But we also have a non-AI driven tool that subs in, that runs side by side with it. So if we need to unrack the AI and do stuff, they still have advanced condition monitoring. So we're not AI for AI's sake. We're not chasing AI, but we do know that AI is the big value creator. And other implementations of AI we're using what we couldn't do in other situations. So, but again, when it's focused on impact, you can get this type of outcome. But when you're not focused on impact and you're focused on ability, which we see too many people do, then you're not going to get 10x. You're not going to even get 1x. So again, we talk about AI, the usage of AI. I look at it from a strategy perspective, and it starts from the top, where again, organizations need to rethink how they do things. Okay. If the goal is to say we're going to leverage AI, then first of all, there needs to be clarity on what that looks like. There's nothing wrong with saying we're going to use artificial intelligence to improve our company's efficiency. And again, that's just why I've seen in so many cases, and if you really dig into the data, the most successful organizations with artificial intelligence, especially the tech companies, they start using it internally. They start dog fooding. They start using it internally to do what? Let's say we optimize HR is a popular example. We cut down our hiring time by 50% by implementing this AI tool. Okay, you can see it internally. Why is it important to do it internally? Well, first of all, you know your problems better than anybody else. Okay, and you can obviously track those problems. You have an intimate sort of kind of relationship with those problems. The other thing is this: you will feel the impact most immediately if you do it internally. Does that make sense?
I want to add something to that, right? You mentioned that a lot of companies, they want to do AI internally, right? I almost think that you have to take a step back. Before AI, I don't know if you guys heard about, robotic process automation, something is
Yep.
RPA. So people will now go straight to, I want AI, I want the cognitive, but yet, and still, they haven't solved back office problems. They haven't solved the things that are really eating up their time, and they're really putting them to a halt. They're looking at the shiny thing. So whenever I go into an organization, I don't just say, oh, RPA, and I don't just say AI. I kind of wrap it into this intelligent
Focus on the
automation
problem.
construct, right? Yeah, I focus on the problem, but I wrap it into intelligent automation. Means the intelligence piece is the cognitive piece. The automation could be, sort of the RPA piece or the task-driven automation and things of that nature. To say that, listen, I come with the knowledge of wanting to understand what your business problems are, right? I have a a spectrum of tools that I can leverage to solve your problems that is not specifically our AI or just, RPA. We want to understand the problem. And then you might talk to a client that is, say, hey man, I want to use AI for this. And you find out their problem might be just reconciliation of bank accounts, right? And with uh, their account payable applications and things of that nature. You could say, man, you don't need AI for that. It's a simple, reconciliation problem that a simple bot can do for you, right? Through RPA. I just need to mimic exactly what the humans are doing and automate it for you. And then they start to think, okay, cool, right? And then when you do it for them, they realize, man, I thought I was going straight to the big gun, the AI. It's like, no, you really have to understand your problem statement and then figure out exactly what you're going to leverage to solve it. And it may not be AI. And most times, it really is not. AI is the next level of evolution in terms of how you solve your business process within your organization. So
You're 100% right. I think that, again, like in my product background, we always say, take the tools, put them in a box, understand the problem, and treat. When you start looking at the solution space, you focus on the optimal and most efficient way to solve the problem. Tools be damned. So you don't, there's no sort of kind of prioritization of this shiny tool. You focus on solving the problems. And if you can get it done with rubber band and popsicle sticks, and that's efficient and it works and it gets you what you want, then that's what you want to do, because it's not going to create value by accruing all the technical debt saying AI, 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 AI. Because again, even if you decide to go the AI route, unbeknownst to most people, it's extremely expensive. Either you're going to have the talent internally or you're going to have it externally. You're going to be paying so prices for like these licenses, or again, you're going to pay for this big team. You got to have people manage this team. You got to have a vision to lead this team. It's complicated. So
yep.
the strategy overall framework, again, starting with the vision, understanding like, okay, when organizations come in, and a lot of times at an org-wide level, they say, we want to use AI to improve efficiencies. It's okay, that's fine. But like objectively, if you're going to do that, you have to actually look at your internal problems and identify if there are any problems where AI is the only solution or the only best solution. If so, then you have to go and develop your roadmap. If not, you don't take a square and force it in a hole for the circle peg. So, but assuming you have that, then you go use case by use case and you establish success metrics. It means to measure the success of one internal pilot programs or pilot programs, etc. And it's no secret that when you look across the landscape of AI as it's been implemented in different domains, that some areas and implementations are very successful and others just fall flat. I mean, there are common denominators. And I think that one of the biggest things is there are some areas where AI has been used so much and it is quite possibly the best solution available for that particular problem that everybody runs to it. Those are successful areas. Okay. Like IoT, IIoT. Those are successful use cases for that stuff. But even then, there are use cases where you don't necessarily need it. And you have to prioritize and say, I'm not chasing AI for AI's sake. Again, a company's. Hmm?
100%. I just want to add one last thing because I really
Sure.
specialize in my focus area is how do you build a program around technologies that are out there, right? It's not just about technology, how you build a program, how you do intake, how do you do value tracking, how do you do benefit realization, how do you staff your team, what are the right sort of skill sets that you need, right? All those things are important to build the program. And one of the things that, sorry guys, my kids just walked in from smash camp. Hold on one second.
No worries.
My apologies there, but I say that to say that sorry guys, let me take a pause on this. They're going nuts right now, so I apologize.
No worries, man.
Yeah, so I think that Yeah, so I'll just keep going through this. We talk about organizations with clear AI strategy, 3 times the return on investments. I think that the meta thesis here is, again, there has to be clarity on what you're doing. There has to be a focus on value creation, and you want to minimize ambiguity. In each use case, in each scenario, the least amount of ambiguity results in a greater amount of success. Because when there's no ambiguity, you can clearly discern what's working and what's not working. If you're throwing money at nothing or if you're actually moving the needle. And again, I'm about to round this out. We look at the problem space. Everything starts with the problem, clearly identifying the problem, understanding it, assessing the impact of the problem, okay, and then looking at this problem we can solve with these possible solutions. Okay, we have these slate of problems. So let's say you identify 3 problems. Which problem has the greatest impact? And then we have something called an infinity matrix where we look at impact versus feasibility. We organize and arrange those problems and say, okay, this problem might have a higher impact, but it's not as feasible for us to go after because of maybe cost or lack of resources or just different hurdles, okay, or barriers. Versus this problem may have slightly less impact, but our capacity to go after it is much greater. So we have a higher, it's more feasible for us to go after this one. So this is the problem right here that's going to generate the best outcome. So looking at things on that infinity matrix and deciding what to go after, setting your success metrics and saying, okay, let's target this one. Let's go small. Let's measure the outcome and see what we got. And these are things with the outcome, the numbers, the results. These are things you can use to get everybody involved, aligned on the actual success of it. And I firmly believe that incremental success leads to bigger success because incremental success leads to incremental buy-in. And the proliferation of that buy-in leads to a more favorable outcome. Rather than saying, we're going to go fix your problem, give us a year, we'll come back with the answers. I mean, from a psychological perspective, that's going to build up too much and the expectations are going to be too high. And even if you do great with that type of anticipation, the expectation is probably going to outpace what you were able to deliver. So again, incremental reporting, incremental progress.
That's outstanding. I really love that. Incremental reporting, incremental success. Think big, right? But take small steps to achieve that, right? Is essentially how, and a lot of times that's how I sell, to CEOs and COOs and letting them know that, yeah, I know you guys have been hearing about AI. I know you want to go big or go home, but think about it. And a lot of them come in with the expectation. They come in, they're new COOs, and they have to make a splash, right? So they're looking for something really big when they don't realize that the best way to actually keep their job long term, right, is to think big, right, but show them that incremental sort of game plan of how you get there with a very clear roadmap, right? So some CEOs would come in and say, "Man, I want to do sentiment analysis, and I want to do this. I want to build recommendation engines and things of that nature." But the smart CEOs go and say, "Okay, what is the landscape that we have right now? What are our business problems, right?" And then they quantify those business problems and see, okay, what tools do we have in-house today that can solve those little things without much expenditure? And then what do we need to get in the future that would target those big ones? You show any board of that plan, you are there to stay for a long time. Okay.
Yep.
The failure is when you come in and you want to do big. If you crash big, you got a target on your back. And you're going to be operating with a target in your back until you're out of it. Versus you come in and showing them this is where we're going to get to in 2026. But for now, this is why why are we doing this? Yeah, I see some value here. It's not going to be huge for now, but we have the tools that will make our cost, we don't have to spend much to get this value right now. But in the next 2 years, this is where we're going to be. When you show them that roadmap, it makes sense. And any board that doesn't buy into that is not a board that wants to, is really for the company. You know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
I've been in multiple organizations when they want to make a big splash versus, all right, what's my roadmap, and let's execute on that. And those are the ones that are truly successful.
Hey, Emeka, I have a question for you. So I've run
Yes,
into
sir.
CEOs of startups that have pressure from their investors, like they haven't exited yet, but they have pressure from their investors to incorporate some AI solution. But I'm curious, you seem to be talking with CEOs of more established companies. So where's the
Correct.
pressure coming from to do something like that? Usually I would think a board would be more focused on the numbers, the long-term outlook. So where do you think the pressure's coming from?
Right. So there's a lot of turnover at the helm, right? So yes, they're established companies, but a lot of them bring in new, COOs. I've been with, several companies that have had turnover at the C-suite level quite often. And it's getting it to a point where it's a lot more these days than before, right? And the expectation is that once you come in, that they expect or you expectation you put on yourself is that I need to make a splash because I'm the new guy, right? I need to show that I have command of this XYZ. So I need to give them some really big ideas. And then what that does is they start to think about the biggest ideas without really understanding, incremental success. And that's where they get into trouble. Even with established companies, that happens. But I see what you're saying with sort of the startups, right? There's always pressure to what and I honestly don't think that's necessarily the best way to be quite honest with you. I think being able to put together a roadmap for success is probably the best way to create longevity. If you do it the other way, it's hit or miss, right? You're either wildly successful or you're
Oh,
out of there in about a year.
I think the folks, the CEOs I talk to, I think they're savvy enough to know that if it doesn't add value, it's not a long-term play. I think quite cynically, the ones I'm mentioning, they're doing it they're doing it cynically. Uh, they know that their investor wants an AI solution, so they say, okay, hey, can you give us an AI solution so we can shut these investors up while so they can run their company the way they want to. So I think from them it's more of a cynical move. The
Got it.
CEOs, yeah.
Okay, I'm with you. Totally understand that perspective. Sure.
Okay, yeah, and to the point about incremental success, just the proliferation, that's literally our strategy at R42. So when you talk about deploying sensors in the manufacturing space, it's not uncommon for these guys to come in and say, we want 3,000 sensors, cover 3,000 of our machines. And that's a small deal, small project. There are over 239,000 factories and facilities with such machines in America alone. I mean, and it's not uncommon for one to have 2, 3, 4,000. So instead of going in there saying, great, we want to get all your machines, you go in there and you run pilots and you say, look, man, let us do 50 machines or 100 machines. Hell, we'll do 20. Let us show you some value. You know what I mean? Because our stuff is non-intrusive and it doesn't disrupt operations. Let us show you value. And then we move from there. And what that does is that gives them talking points and it allows them to go and have these conversations with all parties involved and say, yeah, this really does work for us. And it also allows us to build a reputation score. So it's very important. I mean, I'm a behavioral scientist as well. So just understanding how priming works, human cognition, recency bias. If you're waiting a year from now, there's no recency bias. And you can't outpace the human imagination just from a psychological perspective. But to your point about the quick wins, man, if you get those quick wins in, they're quantifying those quick wins. And every time they reach out to the board or talk to adjacent parties, they're like, look, man, we got this going. We did this, we did that. See, those quick wins live with you during the day. Those big wins, they only come around once a year or two. So yeah, you can keep your job long term by keeping people satisfied with those quick wins. Plus, again, they provide you with directional accuracy. If they're coming in, you know you're doing things the right way. And if they're not, or if they change, it's an indicator that things might not be going the way you planned. Either way, you're not so deep into things that you can't make adjustments and course correct. So it's a win-win for all parties involved, basically. And finally, validation. Again, it's not enough to say, hey, we're going to do this. This is what direction we're going in. You've identified the problem. You checked all the boxes. You found an excellent solution. Let's say that solution is AI, for example. That's fine, but then there's the validation steps. And I'll make that long story extremely short by saying, go small. Anytime somebody wants to implement any type of technology to solve any problem, it's absolutely asinine to pull a 1985 and say we're going to do this massive project SAP style. It's going to take us 2 years, and you're going to wake up and that's just not how it works. Not with the way technology scales today. You have to go in, if possible. There are some rare cases where that's not possible for compliance reasons, etc. But in most cases now, you go in and you do small pilots. You do small programs, you do small implementations, small use cases, and you use those use cases to sort of kind of galvanize the whole thing, to get internal buy-in from stakeholders, and also to validate that the stuff works. You want to make sure it works, and this is your process. So you could prototype. Pilot programs is my personal favorite because you're actually doing it, but then those translate into eventually full-blown implementations. But even the implementations come out in waves until at some point it's big. It evolves to be big. It doesn't start off as something big. Does that make sense?
Can I throw something out there, Ethan?
Sure.
And hey, Keita, or Dr. Keita, how much time do we have left, by the way? I just want to remain respectful and
We can be here as long as possible.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I first off, I love everything that you're saying, Ethan. I think it all resonates. I will say though that I take a very different approach to that in terms of how to get change to happen and stick, right? And especially around the notion of adoption. And what I've done is take more of the approach of focus on the problem, absolutely, and then take a step back and help paint a picture, right? I call it the North Star, right? Paint that picture and get them to step into a space where they see the future version of their organization, such that, and I think on one of your slides you had, what's your AI strategy? I always say, what's your strategy for the future? And then how can we back up and then wrap the AI, intelligent automation, and all these sort of, and actually, it's funny that you say that you're steeped in behavioral science, because I absolutely believe that that's the key component that's missing from all these conversations, right? So I like to say, hey, what's the North Star? What's that big aspirational kind of next level that you're looking to shoot for? How do we outcompete, out edge your competitors? What does the future version of you look like within this space? Then I move them into the space of, okay, let's blueprint that, right? Blueprint doesn't mean build it all at once. Blueprint, if you compare, use the analogy of a home or metaphor of building a home, is to say the blueprint enables all the plumbers, electricians, right, general contractor, right? It gives everybody exactly where they need to be, when they need to be, and it sequences all these different sort of, as I think, as you put it, right, waves of change, right, to happen in order to build this future state. So I like to kind of position it that way. And within this blueprint is the roadmap. Within this blueprint is the business case, but chunked up and tagged to every new capability that we've helped to envision or re-envision, right, for the future. And then once we are happy with the blueprint, then I like to move into the build phase of things. But that build phase is 100% what you just said, that incremental, gradual build up. But with every piece of brick you're laying, that picture is becoming clearer and clearer and clearer relative to what is that end state that we're trying to get to as well, right? And the reason I raised that is because I had some scar tissue around lots of pilots that didn't have a North Star, right? And then it created this weird effect of like technical debt and swirl and even or clashing kind of efforts that created a whole
Some
different
cause fallacy.
so-called all of it, right? So for me, after having that scar tissue build up, I just and I'm hardcore about it to where like if a client doesn't want a blueprint with me before we start building a bunch of things, I will gently and politely and respectfully back out of the deal. I will walk through the visioning part with you, but after that, which visioning is a part of the whole blueprint kind of framework, but I will back out of it ultimately, right? Because I stake our income on the outcome that we hope to achieve. So it's a no BS kind of partnership based approach to building that future and incremental pieces to your point. So I just want to just call that out, kind of get your thoughts on that perspective.
No thoughts. Augment the presentation, guys, because that is fire. Now, that's the type of, like, you're right. That's what you're doing is you're hijacking their cognition. And it's very important to do that. And when you said paint a picture, everything made sense. And sort of kind of in this presentation, that's what's missing. Like you talk about the validation and the pilots, that's fine, but you're right. Pilots for pilot's sake is one of those things that people easily jump into, and they'll just wake up one day, you got all these pilots. Now everybody's got their own personal baby, and you got politics, sunk cost fallacy, and you got a mess. So if you don't have that,
go ahead, Anthony. But I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to stop this right here. But before going back to your point, Stan, you've got to have clear scope. You, like you said, you ask them, what's your utopian environment? What are we trying to get to? You create your scope from that, understand what your requirements are, and you keep that in a box. Anything outside of that, they're paying for that. And then when you're starting these pilots, you have to have a purpose for what you're trying to do. When you're actually doing a pilot well, you understand that there's an outcome that you're trying to reach so that it can actually work in a production environment. That's why, Ethan, we keep going back to these sandbox environments before you're putting it onto, the actual network. So that has to be clear before you're doing that. I mean, I wouldn't, Sam, there's no way I could even talk to a person who's telling me, hey, we're just going to go in here and work without clear cut. This is what we're trying to get to.
Andrew, you're correct, and here's why that approach makes sense, right? So, Stan, two things can be true at the same time, right? Your approach is fine, and it kind of aligns with what we're saying, but because I don't think anyone is saying that you do a sort of POC without some sort of strategic guidance or roadmap, right? Because the money's coming from somewhere, right? You still got to account for POCs. The POCs still cost money. So at the same time, you have to be able to say, okay, yeah, this is what I'm using the money for POC. Granted, it's not it's big budget, but POC still costs money. You still got to say, okay, what am I doing to what's the end goal of this POC? And Andrew is right, because I've been to a lot of clients that don't have, essentially, in order for them to get the big money for the big stuff, they have to show this actually works in my environment, because they've been burned so many times, right? They've had people, oh, come in, dive in. I know you guys can do it. It's hot technology. I need to get, and they'll completely fail. So the reason why POC started to get popular was because every time I come in, I'm like, man, we tried this before, we got burned. We're not doing it again. We have to make sure it absolutely works, because if I buy a whole bunch of software and I put this team and this doesn't work, I'm screwed, right? So you will always find somebody that will tell you, sort of, hey, let's do a POC first. And honestly speaking, the way people hold on to their pocketbooks in this day and age, POC is a great entrance, right? If into new markets or established markets, right? Because now you can say, you can put your money where your mouth is. I'll do this POC for you, Stan. Your approach still works with POC, because if your work is quality, like I know it is, you do a POC, they're gonna be wanting more, 100%. So you
I
should be able to bank on that POC and say,
yeah,
let's do it, POC or
and
not.
and a part of that blueprinting phase that I run through is we get to certain pieces and we say, all right, let's absolutely POC that piece. The only major point that I'm raising is in the way that I engage, it tends to be drive the POC with that context, with that big picture context in the background, so that conversations, engagement, and other POCs that are deployed, it's all within a broader context, so that there's that tight. And Andrew, I think to your point, right, that tight scoping, but from my context, it's about that tight scoping within the broader context of what is that next level that we're trying to achieve overall,
Makes sense.
right?
So this is awesome,
Yeah.
guys. This is really helpful. I think that from a either if you're delivering, if you're talking to clients, if you're talking to customers, this type of mindset really does help to create value. And from our perspective as service providers, product providers, etc., it creates a clarity on our end that helps to guide the relationship as well. So this is extremely important.
And just one quick additional point, Ethan, right? So just to make this real, what we tend to do is we actually put away the PowerPoints and put that in a box, and we break out a digital whiteboard. And when we kind of lay out, either we sort of visualize and illustrate the business model, current state versus future state, what's the gap in the middle,
Got it.
or some other sort of value chain component. That's a business context first, and then we're able to have a conversation where we drill down and say, oh, by the way this component of this value chain works, this is the underpinning capability / technology that makes it possible. But
That's sweet.
Mr. John, this is broken. We have to fix it first. Until we fix it, Mr. John, we can't have a conversation about technology. I ran a workshop about 7 weeks ago and I had one rule. Don't talk to me about technology. Let's talk about shared outcomes. Let's talk about processes. Let's talk about what outcomes we have to achieve together. Let's talk about shared challenges. Let's talk about where things are broken. Let's figure out how to start to align where they're broken, and then the technology is a separate workshop with the right technical folks in the room to help flesh it out. Right after we figured out as a business core, can we and have we fixed the process itself, right? I just can't tell you, I've got so much grace on my face now with folks trying to apply all kinds of technology to processes that are utterly broken.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Technology is the great elixir. And if I could do it all over again, I think the title of this presentation would be, don't talk to me about technology. Because at the most core level, and I do this when I'm problem solving, there's no technology that I can't access in some form and build based on or design a product based on. But the problem with that is if you lead tech first, that's like saying, I got a hammer, let me go solve some problems. It makes no sense at all. You have to literally walk away from technology, ignore technology, and get people talking about their problem. And that's where those passionate conversations, when you paint a clear picture of the problem, the current state, what are they doing right now? Create visual imagery, if you will. And what you're doing is setting the stage to plug in a solution that they can clearly see and feel and visualize and anticipate. And that creates and makes for a better outcome.
So in a sense, the team has to ask the question, what are we trying to solve for before you come up with any solutions? Is how I'm kind of
Absolutely.
gathering.
You need to obsess over the problem. I say
So-
this ad nauseum. You need to obsess over the problem and in obsessing over the problem, and I, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's gone through this. I've actually talked to companies about different problems that they're looking to solve. And it turns out that they're obsessing supposedly over a problem that's not as big a problem as they think it is. They're looking beyond the big problem and they're obsessing. They might be just the obsessing over the symptom as opposed to the actual problem. People aren't as good a problem like detectors as we like to think. So making sure that you've properly identified the problem with the customer is first and foremost problem identification. And once you get there, then you assess the impact of said problem on that organization. And this is where the visualization part comes in. Because if that impact is big and if that pain is acute, they're going to tell all. And that's where you start going in and start painting the picture and start working towards developing that vision of what things will look like when that problem is solved. Again, technology remaining in the abstract, in the background, not to be discussed. But once you start having that stuff, then you can start talking about possible ways that you can plug in things that can fix it, from rubber band and popsicle sticks all the way to the most advanced tech. Nothing is off the table. You know what I mean? Because again, you're looking at impact and ability. Impact and ability. You're doing that when you list out problems, but you're also doing that when you list out possible solutions. You could have some solution that's AI based that can make everything perfect. But guess what? it's insanely expensive, impossible to maintain, and the likelihood of you getting it done within 2 years is very low. Versus another solution that may only get you 85%. But you can implement it in 2 months. Clearly, the 85 non-AI solution is better. But too many times people jump straight towards AI because they're tool chasing, they're buzzword chasing. So I think the meta thesis in everything that's been discussed here is yes, problem identification is of paramount importance. And don't trust the customer to properly articulate their problem. Customers and clients do a horrible job of that.
Amen. Amen to that. And
let me push back a little bit on that. I think it depends on the maturity of the organization and the maturity of the decision maker. I know some organizations that know their problems deeply. They pull me in because they know what they want. They know exactly how they want it.
That's
there
true.
are others that are definitely immature, definitely prone to politics. They have problems. They cannot identify the problem. But there are a lot of world-class organizations out there who know exactly what their problems are and what they need to do to solve them.
yeah, Dr. Kidd, I definitely hear you on that. At the same time, I will say that, there's a value in that outside perspective, because when you live a long time with your problem, yes, you know it very well, but there's going to be those critical blind spots and biases that you just cannot overcome, because you're just a human being, right? Like it's just going to saddle you with you, right? So I think that's something that I think a lot of folks tend to almost kind of overlook a little bit, and then it comes back to kind of bite them in the worst ways, right? So
That's certainly true. There is organizational bias. I agree. I'm I think at a certain point I stopped trying to boil the ocean with some of these organizations. I mean, they have problems. Some of these problems go beyond what they're asking you for.
Yeah.
You're not going to solve it for them.
Yeah.
So
do you give them a little Band-Aid or a gauze, or do you just walk away? I don't know. It depends.
What you just said right there is that's the key. That's the key. What you just said right there, Dr. Kidd. And one tip that I'll share with the group here is, yes, when you iterate kind of up and down against that problem, left and right, you're going to push on outer edges where it's like, oh, I'm overlapping to another area that I literally cannot, either the budget, the political sort of wherewithal of the client, like it just cannot go into that space, and that's where those tight scoping conversations come in. I will say though that when you broaden the aperture, when you broaden the sort of lens that that client is sitting in, it does sometimes spur in them the need to kind of drive certain conversations in other lanes that will allow them to kind of push out, right? And one technique that I've used to help them as crisply and as articulately as possible speak to how their space is intersecting with another space is OKR mapping. I would highly recommend just looking up what that is. It's a technique that's used very, very extensively when it comes to taking a big, broad goal and breaking it down into individual kind of specific objectives within specific spaces. But if you flip that around and think of it from a problem standpoint or problem tree kind of format, right? It kind of puts another lens on it to just kind of create a broader perspective. You still help that client, you still tackle that specific use case and problem, but you're enabling that client to be an even better leader by driving out discussions to say, hey, I did solve my use case. However, I can get 10x value, or I can help us generate 10x value overall if we systematically broaden the conversation out into these two other areas as well, right?
Sure.
Alex, did you have another question?
No, I'm good, thanks. Just taking some notes here. This OKR mapping.
I do have one question, if you don't mind me asking.
Go for it.
Thank you. So this, I wanted to talk about, thank you for first the in-depth knowledge about this. Some things you hear buzzwords and fads, so it's actually good to see some depth and acknowledgement about how things got to this point. But when you say data driven and right problems, we live in a world where data can be manipulated for however you would like to visualize it and see it. How do we display this to be an approach that allows for everyone to come on board? Because I think the problem, from what I'm seeing, is just conversations I've had. People are looking to use data how they're looking to manipulate views instead of just showing data for what it is.
Bro, that's an integrity issue. Okay.
Okay.
Data will be what you want it to be. And I learned a lot when I took like visualizations back in the day when I was in grad school. And there's so much theory behind it. But the theory of visual perception, how we see things, how we perceive things, is so powerful. I can take a set of data and I can create two sets of graphs. One set of graph will convince one group, and the other set of graphs will convince another group with opposite goals and views. That's just that's an ethical challenge. Okay. But at the most fundamental level, when we're talking about being data driven relative to this particular subject, what we're talking about is leveraging internal data relative to, let's say, for example, usage, click-throughs, whatever it takes to measure the overall success of the product, and using that to effectively gauge if it's working or not. Now, if you got somebody internal to the company who's choosing to use that for, less than cool, with less than cool intentions, then that's a whole different challenge. But data can be manipulated for the most part to do whatever. That's what makes it so powerful, for good and for evil. So I have no real answer to that. I'd be interested in hearing what other people have to say, but yeah.
Thank you for your honesty.
So anyway, guys, this is it. If anybody wants a copy of this presentation, I mean, I could send it to you guys or what have you. But it's pretty straightforward. And I think at the end of the day, we've all talked about and effectively covered, look, you got to focus on problems. You got to focus on quantifiable, solutions, and solutions cannot be relative to any trending technology. I could have taken AI out of this presentation and the presentation would not have changed. Bottom line is AI is the new it girl. Before it was big data, before cloud computing and big data or what have you. You
Right.
can't chase trends. And it's hard when trends are on the minds of a lot of people, board members. People want to come in and make that big splash. They want to use trends, but at the end of the day, solutions, real solutions that make big impact are what's going to get you there. So people have to be on board with that. And it's our responsibility, if you are a consultant, if you are a provider of a tech service, CEO, whatever, it's our responsibility to actually get people to understand that the real value is created through going through this process and ultimately creating a vision of where you're going to be. What is your company going to look like with this problem solved? Okay, now let's go solve it. You know? So that's it.
Cool. Hey, thank you, Ethan. This is great. Thank you for laying it out for us. And thanks, everyone. This is a great conversation. This is the type of thing I attend this meeting for. I don't know, man. I think it could be possible. When I see deals on the horizon, maybe we can work together on a deal or two and see where that leads. If y'all are interested in that type of thing.
I'm always interested. Like, what type of deal are you talking about?
Well, I have a deal flow, I guess, on machine learning projects, data science projects, of different sizes. Some are like PLC type projects. Others are, can you integrate this, whatever, can you create a recommendation system and deploy it into production type of things. We have discovery calls where we discuss some of the stuff that y'all were mentioning, but I don't know, maybe there's always chances and deals to upsell or to expand the scope of it. So maybe what I'll do is have one-on-one conversations with you all and see like where your strengths lie, or where your skill sets are, and try to work that into a future deal if y'all want to do something like that.
I am game. I live and breathe the space of blueprinting it out, right? So everything that we just talked about in terms of really fleshing out what are we trying to solve for, but with a behavioral science-based twist to it on the back end. And then leading sort of an interdisciplinary approach to how you problem solve through it too, right? Because I just have a fundamental belief that if you have just one discipline sitting at the table trying to problem solve something through, you're just going to have major blind spots, right? So it's about having extremely different people at the table and being safe enough to have a robust conversation around it, right? Like we're having, right? I think that's critical. Anyways, man, I always jokingly say, man, within BEM, we've got like $1 trillion worth of horsepower. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah.
I am game to collaborate with you brothers anytime.
All right then. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you next week for another great discussion and call.